بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Brothers and sisters, I'm just going to start by saying that it is absolutely terrifying having to speak to you after that phenomenal speech that we all just heard. SubhanAllah. So Allah is testing my sincerity because I have to go after that and somehow deliver something useful. But I think we're all here because we need community. We need solidarity. We need to be among believers, among people who see the sun at noon and call it the sun. We are here, brothers and sisters, because so many of us are heartbroken. So many of us came here for the exact jolt of faith that we just heard. Because we are seeing unprecedented brutality televised into our living rooms and onto our phones. As of now, there are more than 21,000 civilians that have been killed by Israel in Gaza. More women and children have been killed in just the first month of this massacre than were killed in Ukraine in the first 2 years of that war. More children in Gaza have been killed than in every other war zone on earth for the past year combined. And that was just in the first 30 days. So if you are watching this and feeling overwhelmed with grief, sometimes unable to just function in your life, it is because you are human. I recently met with a group of students who were telling me about the challenges that they're facing at their universities, where they are being penalized for speaking up for human rights. They are being harassed and doxxed. They're losing internships. They're losing job offers. And some of them admit in private that they're ready to give up. Is anything they're doing really making a difference? And my answer to them and to you today is this: we are not accountable for bringing about justice. We are accountable for standing and working and bearing witness to justice. Allah has already told us that the victory will never be because of our meager means. The victory will only come from Him. And yet, as ibad Allah, we must work. We must work in obedience to Him. Because we are promised victory, my sisters and brothers. Allah tells us in His book that His victory is near. Allah tells us in His book that this land of Palestine, of Al-Aqsa, is blessed, and everything that surrounds it is blessed. He assures us that an opening is near. And so the question is not, will we save Gaza? The question is only, will we save our own souls by being part of the Fath of Allah? You know, sisters and brothers, I am nothing close to even a student of the Quran, but I am someone who was taught to take the scripture of Allah very seriously and to reflect on it and to think about how it impacts and relates and is relevant to my life and to the things I see around me. And I want to share with you some reflections from the Quran that I think are so relevant today, that help me and perhaps will help some of these young people who I met with and others who may feel the same way, not give up. In the Battle of Badr, where the Muslims were outnumbered 3-1, and we all know this story, the believers were reminded in Surah Al-Anfal that it was not them who threw, but it was Allah who threw. And in the tafsir you read in Ibn Kathir that it was a reference to grains of sand. Grains of sand, my sisters and brothers, who Rasulullah and the believers picked up and threw, handfuls of sand. Have you ever thrown sand at someone at the beach? It won't even go 2 feet. And yet, lines and lines of the enemy in full armor across the valley were defeated by grains of sand. Where Rasulullah and the believers were told, throw your sand. And they picked up this sand and they threw it, and Allah took these grains of sand into the eyes of the disbelievers, distracting and blinding them until the Muslims were victorious. Why? Why did they throw sand at an army in full armor when it seems like so harmless to defeat such a formidable force? Why couldn't Allah have simply blinded them? Why couldn't Allah have taken the sand and blown it in their eyes without the believers doing anything? Because of His generosity, my sisters and brothers, He wanted to give the believers the reward of being a part of the victory. And so, what we are asking ourselves every day is, do we want to throw sand in the eyes of injustice and be part of the victory that Allah has already foretold? Or do we want to be left behind? Do we want the blessings? Do we want the privilege of being part of it? Or do we want to be bystanders? Musa alayhi salam, one of my favorite ayahs in the Quran relate to Musa alayhi salam. I have studied and reflected on these ayahs extensively with my teachers. And the ones related to the sorcerers are especially important today because every tyrant has illusionists that work for them, that convince you that up is down and down is up and the aggressor is the victim and the victim is the aggressor. You need illusionists to work for you if you are trying to convince the world that you are the victim when you've just murdered 20,000 innocent people. You need magicians for that. And so Musa alayhi salam was up against the greatest magicians in the land. Some mufassirin say that Fir'aun went and found magicians as far as South Africa for this challenge. It wasn't just Egypt, but the entire continent of Africa. And he brought them together And again, some say that it was 7 magicians, some say it was 700, and even 70,000 magicians. Rows and rows and rows of these illusionists were lined up in front of the whole country in the day of festival at daybreak, where you can see everything clearly. And he was up against them. And in their way of challenging him and making him feel low, they asked him, do you want to go first? Do you want to throw first, or should we go first? And he said, you can start. And this was a way to show them their confidence. And so they threw their sticks, and they looked like, even in front of his own eyes, they looked like snakes. And it says in the Quran that he harbored fear in his heart. He was taken by the illusion himself and felt some fear. And so when you're watching CNN or MSNBC and you're feeling a sense of dread and fear because of the propaganda that you're hearing, know that it is not because you're weak, but that the illusion is powerful. And Allah then reassures his messenger. He says, don't be afraid. You are the one with the upper hand. Throw what is in your right hand, and it will overtake what they manufactured. Because all they manufactured is the handiwork of illusionists, and illusionists will never succeed, no matter where they are. The staff of Musa in this context, my sisters and brothers, is the staff of truth, is the staff of what is true, of what is right, of what is factual. You think that we can't overtake them because of the billions that they have poured into illusion, PR, well-rehearsed talking points, slick, polished campaigns of propaganda full of celebrity endorsements. And yet, the single stick of the truth, throw what is in your right hand. Tell the truth. And it will overtake the illusion. And that is exactly what has happened, as you just heard. I saw one report that showed a 50 times digital footprint of hashtag Free Palestine versus I Stand with Israel. 50-fold. This would be remarkable anytime. This would be remarkable if we had the same resources as the other side. This would be remarkable if we had half the resources as the other side. But the fact that 50 times, I'm in the field of marketing, to get something like 50 times your competitor in terms of social media imprints is virtually impossible. And that's if you spend the same as them and even 10 times as much. And yet we did it with no resources, zero, nothing, compared to the billions that have been poured into their PR effort. That is the barakah of Al-Aqsa. That is the barakah of the land of Philistine. So do not despair, my sisters and brothers. Keep throwing your stick. And you may feel sometimes that you're yelling and screaming into the void, as so many of these young people I met with said. We don't know if anyone is even listening. And it brought to mind the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who was ordered by Allah to call the people to Hajj. And he was alone in the desert, in the wilderness, with no one around for thousands of miles. He was just one man calling people to Hajj. And in obedience to Allah, he didn't say, "Who will hear me?" He instead called the people as he was ordered. And they came, and they came from that day until the end of time. It reached every believing heart, because it is not on us to bring about deliverance. It is only on us to obey and perform the deeds as told by Allah. And we have seen this, sisters and brothers, where people who do not share our faith or our culture, from Barcelona to Brazil, have marched in the hundreds of thousands for the case of Palestinian freedom, for the case of Palestinian liberation, against the slaughter of innocent people. That voice that we feel is not reaching is in fact being taken to the whole world. And so, sisters and brothers, I end by reminding you and myself that this is not just another cause. This is Al-Aqsa. This is the first Qibla. This is the second mosque. This is the seat of the last Khilafah. This is the place of resurrection. This is the gateway to the heavens. Keep throwing your sand. Keep tossing your stick. Keep calling, even if you think your voice won't carry, because God's promise is true. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.